Hi guys, I wanted to walk you guys through how to do Peyote with a Twist, which is Gerlinde Lenz's fabulous new invention of a new way to do peyote tubes. And let me kind of show you the difference between what a normal peyote tube looks like and peyote with a twist looks like. So here's a couple different ways to do a peyote tube. This one I actually did as a flat piece, so something like this. And then I did my whole folded up like a taco and zipped it together. And so it's basically a large version of a toggle ring, but you can make this as long as you want, of course. It makes for a pretty stiff closure. I didn't do very many rows. If I had doubled the number of rows, it would be a wider tube here, but this is how that sits in tube form. And notice how the holes are vertical, so the holes are all in this direction. This is tubular peyote. So this is where I started in with a ring and I built it up. You can kind of see here I've got the up beads and the down beads. So there's my sticky outie and my low bead. And in this, because I don't have a super tight tension, mine is pretty flexible. It collapses down quite a bit. And also, if you'll notice, the holes are horizontal with this one. Then, let's move on. This is peyote with a twist. Notice how these holes are at a diagonal, which is really a cool difference between these others. The other thing is that it is pretty stiff. I mean, not stiff, but it keeps its tubular shape pretty well. Now you could insert something in the center there to make it hold its tubular shape better if you wanted to, but this is what it looks like in 11s. This one is done with size 8s. This one is done with size 11s, and it doesn't collapsing down at all on me. And this is the same number of beads in both of these. I started out with, I believe, 10 beads for the first rows on both of these. So this is with size 8s, this is with size 11s. This stripe right here in both of these is what I recommend, and I think what Gerlinde recommends also for beginners when you're learning this technique, is to use a contrast color for that spot, because it's important to be able to see that when you start out. So this would be how to do it to start out, and I will have other videos in the future how to create or follow a pattern in this technique, but this is just the basic technique right now. So let me put some of this to the side here and we'll get going on how we actually start. So, I wanted to show you one more thing here, and that is here on the end. This is how the end, I'm going to bring you in a little bit closer. There we go. This is how the end works up. So this is what it's going to look like as we're working on this. And so it kind of has almost like, it makes me think of a cannoli. Leave it to me to think of pastry, but that's what that end looks like. I will in this video show you how you would build this side up so that you had a flush end here, so that you could insert this in an end cap or create an end cap. I've actually already done that build up here on this end with the size 11s. So you can see where it's basically built up to a single point here, and then an end cap is going to go over that. Okay, so now let me go back to putting this off to the side, and let me get this piece here. I'm actually going to start out showing you how to weave this flat peyote piece that we need to start out with, because some people may have never done it where they're trying to use an accent color on either side, so I will kind of whip through this. But I've gone ahead and attached a stopper bead, and then you're going to pick up one of the accent color and then 8 of your main color. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then one more accent bead. So that's my 10 right there, okay? Bring it down to the stopper bead, and then we're just going to peyote across. And since my very first bead is going to sit right on top of this accent bead, I want it to be the accent color again. So we're skipping a bead and passing through the next bead. And then you're just going to do regular peyote across, pick up a bead, skip a bead for it to sit on top of, and pass through the next bead. And I'll just want to get to the other side and show you the turn here. Got a couple of funky beads off here. Let's cull out the funky ones. And then this last bead that I'm picking up is going to sit on top of this one, and then I'm going to pass through that accent color. When I switch, now I need to come back and go the other direction. You can either come down, or I like to flip it because I always like to work away from myself. You'll see that the very first bead that we're picking up before we go through the first sticky outie here is going to be an accent bead, because it's stacking on top of an accent bead. So that's the only thing to remember, is that as you do that first stitch, each time it's going to be an accent bead that you pick up first. And then you're just going to keep going back and forth until you have 11 rows. And that's what I've got here, is 11 rows. I've already taken the liberty of weaving back in my tail thread, but if the tail thread were here, it would be coming out of this bead right here. So that's by doing 11 rows, both your working thread and your tail thread are going to be coming out of the same side of this piece. If you don't know how to count rows, you can always count them on a diagonal. I have always found that a little bit difficult to do. So what I like to do instead is count the outside 2 columns. And it doesn't matter whether you do the 2 columns on this side or the 2 columns on this side, you'll come up with the same count. But it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's how you know you've got your 11 rows. All right. So then what do? You're going to actually have this oriented so your working thread is coming out the bottom. And then we're going to kind of fold this into that cannoli shape, okay? And so to do that, what we're going to do is you're going to pass through this top left accent bead. And you're going as if you were going to do a regular peyote stitch here. You're not picking up any bead as you do this. And then we're going to come all the way back down here to this first sticky outie underneath where your thread was coming out, and we're going to pass through that one. And notice how I'm not tightening as I do this. I like to go ahead and make sure that I'm hitting the right beads before I do any tightening. So we went from outside here to inside to outside on the top left, and then outside to inside on the first sticky outie on the bottom right. Okay, so now when I tighten all this up, this will kind of, and because I'm using 8s, this doesn't tighten as beautifully as it does with 11s, but I wanted to have this big enough that you could see. You can kind of see where this line of accents kind of moves into this line. And what will happen is as we add more rows, that will solidify. If you wanted to, nah, we're not even going to go there. So that's how you do that. Now, where we're going to work is right down here. So I am going to flip this because I'm a righty, and I just find this easier to kind of work in this direction. And this right here is the little section of peyote that we're going to work back and forth. So right here, we're just doing regular peyote. We're going to go up to the tip. So I'm picking up a bead and going through the sticky outie. And it's all normal right up to the end here. And now we want to go back the opposite direction. Here, notice I'm coming out of an accent bead. That means I want to pick up an accent bead for right there. So let's pick that up, and we're just gonna turn around, go through the sticky outie. This is all normal. This is one of the best things about it, is that most of this is normal, feels really normal. It just is in a different kind of, it's just not flat. All right, so here is where we get to the, oh no, what do I do now spot. Kind of tighten that up, there we go. So here, I've got space. This is a down bead. I want to add one more bead here, but how do I attach it? no problem. We're going to pick up that bead. You're going to pass through that accent bead right there on the corner. And then to get back in position, now we're going to come up the next accent bead and through the bead that we just added. Let me get this thread out of the way here. Like so. Notice how because when I attached this, remember I picked it up and I went down through this bead and then came up through this bead, and by doing that and attaching it through both beads, notice how it is sitting kind of in between, right on that little space right there. And that's exactly what we want, because look what happens back here in regular peyote. You've got that little stitch in the ditch space in between each of those. Well, we just created that by going down and then up, okay? So now we're going to flip it and then look at this edge again. Here we are, we're ready to do a whole nother row, and it all lines up perfectly. So let me walk you through one more here. I'm going to pick one up, pass through the next sticky outie. Just going to do that all the way up. Then right here, I'm stacking on top of one of the accent beads, so I'm gonna grab an accent bead here. As you turn this corner, keeping the tension on this can be a little bit of a trick, and so this is where I like to put my finger over what I'm beading so that I can tighten this nicely, because occasionally what'll happen is you'll kind of end up with something like this, and all you have to do if that happens is tighten here and then tighten here. Just do it in 2 steps, because you're tightening in 2 different directions to get it nice and snug in there. And we're just going to finish getting all the way down to the end, and then we'll do our funky turn. I should call it the Gerlinde turn. Okay, so here we are. We've got our space. I'm picking up my bead. I'm passing through that accent bead. It's right there. It just happens to be a different color, and it's attached to a wall of peyote. And then to get back in position to add the next bead, we're going through the accent bead right next to it plus the bead that I just added. Tighten, turn. I like to kind of tighten that up, and look, we're growing. So every time we're coming up here, we're growing this spot by 1 when we add that green bead going back down. And here we're attaching all this on this edge. And notice how this is now starting to look a little bit more like an actual line. But remember that most people are going to put an end cap on this, and that's going to be the part that's going to sit underneath that end cap. So if it's not 100% perfect, don't worry about it. The other thing you can do is, if I had left my tail thread there, instead of ending it off, I just wanted 1 fewer threads here for the video, you could actually join these 2 together with your tail thread as you went to go weave that off, and that would be helpful. So that is the basics of how you do the stitch. When I come back, I will show you how you're going to build up that edge to add an end cap. Actually, before I start showing you how to weave the end up so that they're even, I wanted to show you this funky turn just in a different direction. It occurred to me that sometimes I flip it first before I make the funky turn, and this may actually help some people see it a little bit differently. So here I am, I've got my little spot right here to add this last bead in. So I picked up and dropped, picked up that bead. And where I'm going to attach it is through that accent bead straight ahead. Remember that in the future, this might not be an accent bead. It may be all the same color. So it's just going to be the bead that's just on the other side of that hole. And then you're going to turn around and immediately pass through the bead that's right next to it, plus the bead that you just added. And doing that will sit that new bead at that half step up in between those 2 beads that you just went through, okay? So to taper this up on this side only so that we can get it to where it'll fit well into an end cap, we're still going to be doing the same thing. We're just going to stop by 1 bead early every row. So here we go. We're going to start our taper. So where we've been taking 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches on our way up, we're only going to take 3. That was 1, 2, 3. And then now we're going to go ahead and turn around. So because this is stacking on top of a non-accent bead, I can keep it non-accent. And so it'll be 3 beads going down. This is one of those ones that kind of loosened up on me, so I'm going to tighten that first in one direction and then tighten it in the other. Oops. You're still going to do the funky turn down on this end. So I picked up my 1, pass through the accent, pass through the accent right above it, plus the bead I just added. Okay, so that was 3 stitches. This time we're going to take 2 stitches on our way up. So 1, 2, immediately going to turn around and go back down. We're going to do our funky turn. So through the accent. I do think it's easier for me to do it when I have it flipped in this direction, like so. Okay, so this time we're only going to take 1 stitch. So it's 1 stitch, immediately turn around and go back, oop, throwing beads around, and go back in the other direction, like so. I'm going to kind of pinch it as I take that stitch to hold the tension. We still need to do that funky turn bead, like so. So you can see where I'm starting to get these points right here. Now I still have a spot right here that looks like it needs a point, correct? That's because right here we're simply going to do an additional funky turn bead. So I'm picking up 1, it's going to sit right next to the one that I'm coming out of, and then go back in. There we go, like so. So now I have all of the beads up here at the top. And then to taper it in even a little bit more, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a bead and I'm just going to pass through the next sticky outie all the way around the top. It's just going to kind of tighten it inward. When you get to this last one, you could just kind of, it's not a normal spot for it to be there, but you can kind of see where it is. And remember that all of this is going to get hidden underneath your end cap, so it does not have to be pretty. At this point, I usually like to just go around this tip again, just to reinforce it a little bit. And then you can end off your thread, and we can attach an end cap. And what I've done over here is this one, I actually filmed this video once and goofed it up. So this is my redo. So I actually have glued this one on already. This is a glue-in magnetic clasp that I really like for these faux crochet type rope looks. This particular end cap is, shoot, where's the sizing? Hang on one sec. I should have had my little packages out for the sizing here. And they come in all sorts of different sizes. This one was a bigger one. This is the one that I used. It is an 18mm clasp with an interior diameter of 10 millimeters. So this, I will get these clasps in various sizes up on my website. So, so this is that 18mm one, but then we also have, this one is a, well this, oh, I take it back. So this is the one that I use. So it actually has a 12 millimeter, 18 millimeter with a, nope, it is 10 millimeter. And then, okay, so then this one, aha, they're getting tricky on me. This is what's going on. They're both 18 millimeter on the outside, but the inside, one is 10 millimeter and one is 12 millimeter. So let's see which one actually this is, because that's going to make a difference. So let's see what fits. Okay, so it's the 12 millimeter interior diameter that you need to go over the size 8 seed beads version of this, and it is 10 beads that I started out with. So if you use 10 size 8 seed beads to start out with, this is the perfect end cap. I also have found these, which is an acrylic. So and if you don't like the plated, these are plated magnetic. This is an acrylic magnetic, and this also has a 12 millimeter interior diameter, and it just kind of gives it a I don't know, it's, you know, you can see the difference in the profile. This just has more of a puffed look to it. But they come in a bunch of different colors, which is really pretty cool. And these magnets seem like they're very strong and very nice. I know a lot of people who use these in their designs and have been quite pleased with them. Then in the, let's see here, this is the size 11 seed beads one, where I have, again, used 10 beads to start out with. Then this is the size to work with for that. And let me find the sizing info there. Okay, so that is the 16 millimeter magnetic clasp with an 8 millimeter interior diameter. So that means this part here is 8 millimeter, and that fits perfectly there. I do not believe they make these acrylics. Well, you know what? I take it back. I think they do make them that small. I don't happen to have one with me, but I will get some ordered, and I will have all these on my website at jillwisemandesigns.com. And the only thing that I did with this to get this glued is I used E6000 glue because I know how strong it is. And so what I did, and we'll go ahead and get one end on this smaller one done, is I just put some inside the clasp itself. It's got a hole there, so you can kind of just pop it in, a decent sized glob. E6000 is a toxic glue, so you might want to, if you're chemically sensitive, you might want to use do this outside, or you might want to use gloves. I'm actually not touching it as I do this, so I'm not going to worry about it. Then I'm just going to take that end and I'm going to kind of get it in there, move it around a little bit, make sure the glue is coating, the beads as well as the tube itself. And then you're just going to let that sit. And this is the hardest part, is to have the patience to just let it sit. It is going to take 24 hours for it to fully set up. And I know that that's a long 24 hours, but hopefully in that 24 hours, you can start working on your next piece already. So that is everything that I have for you today. And like I said, future videos will show you how to do patterns, how to create your own, and how to use other types of patterns. Some of the crochet patterns that are out there, you actually can manipulate and use in this. But I would like to say a huge thank you to Gerlinde for being so gracious to let me do this video for you guys, for basically creating this really cool technique and making it open source so that lots of different designers can use it and play with it and see what they can do with it. It was an incredible gift to the beading community. It is not the first of Gerlinde's gifts to the beading community. She is a wonderful person, and so thank you, Gerlinde. Thank you guys. Bye-bye.